Good.
So for anybody that's just logging in, I'm going to wait a few more minutes. I like to make sure as many people are here as possible before we get started, but we are going to be talking to the potters of Tandava, the Glencoe ceramics crew, and each person will get a chance to describe their work and kind of talk about their practice. So it's going to be a really fun talk. The show is currently up at Riverland Community College in Austin, Minnesota, and it's in the James Wegner Gallery. The show will be up through next week. I believe it's going to be, it's coming down, I think, the 27th. So we have another week. It's open Monday through Friday, and that is about 9 to 6 p.m. or I think it's actually 10 to 6 p.m. I think that this is probably a good time to start now that they have that. So I'm joined tonight by the potters of Glencoe Ceramics. They have a show called Clay Transformed that's currently in the James Wegner Gallery at Riverland Community College. The show is just amazing. So if folks haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, I highly recommend going. It's still up for about a week. We're going to hear from all of the different potters, and then we're going to be treated to some student questions, which I always really love about the work. Dom's classes have toured the show, and so they have some questions for us. So to start out, I thought I would talk a little bit in general just about wood firing, because I think prior to meeting any of these folks, I really didn't have much of an idea of what it was at all. So the kiln is named Tandava, and Pratibha will talk a little bit about it, but she is one of the owners of the kiln and kind of founders of the group. And Tandava means dance of fire. So I think that's a really apropos name for what happens to the pottery when it's in the kiln. This is an image of the kiln from I believe the last firing, toward the end of the firing when it was finishing. And you can see the fires coming out of all the peeps and out of the chimney. So really intense heat, more than I ever thought or expected. Pratibha provided us with some early images of the kiln. Here it is when it was being constructed. So to me, that's a really interesting comparison between sort of its early stages and it in action there. What is wood firing, and what kind of kiln is this? So wood firing is an ancient form of firing pottery, and really one of the first forms, the way that pottery was fired. A wood kiln can be fired for multiple days, and it's heated with wood. So it tends to be around the clock enterprise for the person or people that are involved in firing it. And very often it's going to be a group of folks working together. The kiln Tandava, again, Tandava meaning dance of fire, is an Anagama style kiln. So Anagama means cave kiln. And if we kind of back up a little bit and look at the side of it, or move forward and look at the interior of the kiln, you can kind of see why it would be a cave style kiln. Even thinking too about, I'm just spitballing here, but probably people were firing in different, I would think potentially using caves that already exist and maybe building out from that, or at least being inspired by the structures in nature. Gama is a Korean term for kiln. So at minimum, it's a cave style kiln or a cave shaped kiln. Here's an image of Pratibha loading wood into the kiln. And it's got a door. You can see it's sort of like almost like a drawbridge style, weighted door, counterweighted door that comes down, and the heat that comes out of it is incredible. Here are the pots that are being fired inside the kiln. This is an interior shot and an image of the fire coming out of the chimney. We've got a few images of wood being delivered. Not sure about that one, but this one's definitely the delivery of wood. And then the wood has to be cut. So a couple chopping up wood images. Pots have to be wadded or the bottoms have to be restricted so that they don't fuse themselves to the shelves. Here's a picture of Zack loading all of the little, oh my gosh, I forget what they're, cone packs. Had a moment of total forgetfulness there. Each cone kind of will drop at a certain temperature so that you can tell in the kiln how hot it is. Here pots are being loaded. And here's an image of Barb loading some pots. Loading. And then this is actually an image of the kiln being opened, but I thought it's helpful to be able to see how it's bricked up, how the door is actually bricked and unbricked every single time that it's fired. And then a few action shots of firing, Barb and Dom loading wood into the kiln. The kiln gets so hot that it just consumes wood at an incredible rate. One time we cooked a steak through one of those holes and it took about a minute. Here are the cones tipping, so they start melting, tipping over. And then again, images of the kiln. I have a video that I'll play in a second, showing it at sort of peak velocity. And then you unload it. So pulling pots out, looking at the pots, and now the pot's in the show. So this is an image from the James Wegner Gallery and the Potters, the group that is Glencoe Ceramics, minus Dom, who couldn't make it that day. So jumping right in, we're gonna be looking at Pratibha's work to start with, but I wanted to just share this video, which was from, I think, the last firing, maybe. That gives just an impression of like how high velocity this fire gets. Just a really incredible video. So moving on, we're going to hear from each of the potters in turn, and we are going to start out with Pratibha. Pratibha, like I said, was part owner, originator. She owned the land that the kiln was on, still does. And, you know, she's been a real big inspiration to me because she makes both pottery and paintings and sort of mixes those two things together sometimes in really interesting ways. And so I'm going to hand it over to Pratibha and mute.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Pratibha here. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, this is Pratibha. And I am, as Laura has already talked a lot about our kiln, Anagama kiln, which we call Tandava. Why we named it Tandava is derived from Indian mythology. Lord Shiva dances in the circle of fire. And that's why the dance of fire was just an apt title for our kiln. And it is a community thing. And first of all, I want to thank the Riverland College for inviting Glencoe Ceramics and its potters to exhibit their work in the gallery. It is an honor for all of us, for me and my teammates, to be able to have this opportunity to showcase our work in the gallery. And a special thanks to Laura, who has made it all possible and made it look so beautiful. Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome. Sorry, I had to pop out to say.
I wasn't sure if you could hear me.
Nope,
so,
you are loud and clear.
Okay, good to know that. To tell something about myself, I'm a sculptor, potter, and a painter. I did stone carving for 5 years, but it was affecting my lungs. So I switched to pottery, which I just enjoy so much. I have always painted and a lot of painting, but now I can't do much because I have loss of my vision in one eye. But all these disciplines, they interact with each other and they influence each other. A lot of my work is painterly. Some of my work is very sculptural, like you can see this face, a wall piece, very sculptural. And so the 3D and 2D both come together in my work. And I love the interplay of all these mediums together. A lot of my work, you can see if closely, you can see the painting is the same image on the pot also. It's just fun. Because of the ideas, all of them give to each other. Sometimes through pots, I get ideas for painting, and sometimes from painting for the pots. And what I want to say is that I want to express joy through my work. Like these pictures, the talking pictures is such a joyful sculptural piece that I always smile when I look at them. It is when like two friends talking heart to each other, what a joy they get. They feel so satisfied and so good about it. That's how these pictures, I feel, are humanized and animated, and they give that joy to their audience as well. So I like to, this is another sculptural piece. It's a wall piece. It's like I get my inspiration from anywhere, from my surroundings. This is like a floating face, floating form. It's like if you look at the clouds, you can see any form there too. And sometimes I just sketch on iPad, on a scrap paper, something, and that becomes an inspiration. Can get these inspiration from anywhere around us. Once I was in a coffee shop, somebody was sitting with a hand, with their face resting on their hand. I sketched it on a scrap paper, and that became the inspiration for one of my sculptures. It's just keeping your eyes open and finding what interests us in terms of our aesthetics. Finding the language, the aesthetic language. This is a large painting. It's about 7 feet by 3.5 feet. It's oil. Call it Steps in Tune. It expresses the joy that is inside me. I am sharing it with everybody who looks at it. It's the music and the musicians and the dancers, like more like folk dance. Like when you're happy, you jump and dance or in a rhythm. And it's a natural expression of our joy. And I'm so happy to share this joy with everybody around me and the people who look at my work. Through my work, sharing this joy is very satisfying. That itself is a joy to me. We have the similar images on those pots also. This is also a large painting, 7 feet by 3 feet. Let's call it Call. And it's like giving voice to the voiceless. It's trying to express my inner feelings through my work. I usually use porcelain for ceramics. We are talking, this show is mainly a wood-fired ceramics show. Porcelain and stoneware. When they are leather hard, I size my design, and then after bisque, I fill them with engobe and then glaze them and high fire them. I like movement. I like my work to have life, because something which is rigid and straight is dead. A dead body doesn't move, and living beings move. So even that dip on the lip gives it a movement. So as long as things are, I'm able to give life to my work, I feel good about it. So we have already talked about Anagama Kiln, what it is and why we built it. And it is a team effort. We all work very hard. It's developed a big and nice comradeship with the group. Some of my best friends are from this group. And we just love working with each other and trying to find solutions for making the kiln work. So I'm really happy about this show, and thank you to all my team members.
Thank you, Pratibha. That was so fun to hear about your pieces and sort of your backstory. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. So we are going next to look at some work by Barb Bujold-Martinez. And I'm going to mute myself and share her work. Take it away, Barb.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you to the James Wegner Gallery for hosting us. We've had a lot of fun putting this show together. It's been a great opportunity. And thanks to everybody who has come to look at our work. I've always made things with my hands, starting out with, the more traditional needlework, not tattoo art, sewing and knitting and embroidering, things like that. And at one point, a couple of my brothers were taking a pottery class and invited me to join them. And before long, my sister got involved, and Tuesday nights we were all at pottery class, and it was kind of a social thing for us. It was nice, but then I started to notice how, I could tell that pot was from my brother Dan, or that was made by my brother Dave. And it just kind of intrigued me that each one of us, given a ball of clay, will do something different with it. And so the possibilities are endless. And that's what keeps me, I think, interested in pottery. I've been learning through classes that I take by going to galleries and the pottery tour, the various pottery tours. I learned from the people around me who make pots. You start seeing things through that lens of how you might, something catches your eye. Maybe I'm at a restaurant and the pattern on the tile floor. I think, how could that, maybe that, I really like that. Maybe that could work into a pot for me. So there are some rules about working with clay, but in general, I feel like clay has been very, very forgiving of my awkwardness in the beginning as I developed my skills. Something special about wood fire, I think. You have all the usual design elements of what kind of clay do I want to use? Do I want to decorate the surface? What kind of glaze or no glaze? And then the final choice is, where is this pot going to go in the kiln? With a wood fire kiln, it's less predictable. So where you set it kind of sets a pathway where fire and ash and the whole atmosphere of this fiery atmosphere is going to move through all these pots. Sometimes you're delighted by something that resulted from that touch of fire ash. And sometimes you're disappointed because you got a dump of debris on your beautiful bowl. But you learn that even that dump of debris is an opportunity to contribute to the design. You might sand away some of it. Anyway, it's not all in your hand. The kiln has a piece to play, a part to play in the end piece of work. So I start pots usually at the wheel, And I have some idea of what I want to make, but I'm open to something interesting that I might see happening from the clay responding to my touch. I can't describe my own style at this point, but I am delighted when I make something that feels like it is my own. And I think that also keeps me going. I'm attracted to wood firing also because of the community that Pratibha mentioned. There's a lot of work involved and it's messy. Everything about working with clay is pretty messy, but it's fun. We cut mountains of wood, cut and pile them. We design changes to our kiln yard and build things. We make adjustments to our kiln. But all of this work is not drudgery. It's kind of like the beginning of the next opportunity to fire that kiln and be surprised by what we get out of it. So also working in community gives you more backup as far as all of the tasks that individual artists face. Somebody's good at computer skills. Somebody's good at keeping an eye out for opportunities to show our work or sell. Somebody else knows a lot about kilns or can research and guide us on always improving what we have, how our kiln functions. So somebody else can lead a construction project and we all kind of support each other as far as sharing ideas, and it's a very very comfortable community of people. And I guess the last thing I would say about wood firing is that it's a really nice balance between working in your own studio, your own space, and then coming together. We're firing 3 or maybe 4 times a year now. So coming together for about a week of pretty intense community. So that's something that is really valuable about wood firing. So thank you for this opportunity to share my work.
Thanks, Barb. Yay, that was so much fun. So we are going to keep moving along, and our next potter up is Kim Christopherson, and I'm actually going to show a little video of the cups first because my videos aren't playing in the PowerPoint, and I want to show it because I like it and it makes me happy. Which I don't know, it's my selfish reason. So let's move my little window there, that one there. Okay. I'm going to play the cup video, Kim, and then I'll just start showing your work. So you can start talking whenever you want.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Kim Christopherson. I'm with the Glencoe Ceramics Group. I have worked with stoneware and porcelain for a number of years, making functional pots for everyday use. I was asked to join the group in 2014 and to try out wood firing to see if it fit for me. I thought it would be a good start towards learning how to fire in wood. Found it to be very challenging, for me at least, since I never have done the wood firing before. I found that it was more hands-on experience, and with cutting the wood and making sure you had enough to make it through the firing, and then maybe a little bit more just in case you needed it. Make sure you have enough wadding, and finding out what glazes are best for wood firing. A few things from the long list of items would be cleaning the shelving, vacuuming out the kiln, getting it ready for the next firing. And things like this you need to do each time you're going to fire and unload the kiln. Everything out there is done with a team effort and a lot of camaraderie. And it's really a lot of fun, even though it's more work. And I always try to think of work as fun. So it doesn't feel like you're working at all. So, and with that in mind, I would like to thank everyone for this opportunity.
Thanks, Kim.
You bet.
Next up, we are going to listen to pots from Mike Egan. Mike, I'm going to mute myself and you can take it away.
Okay, thank you, Laura. And I want to thank everybody there at Riverland for this opportunity. My name is Mike and I'm a potter. If someone ever told me that I would be a potter, I would have asked what they were smoking. Art was of no interest to me, throughout my academic time, starting in kindergarten. I was exposed to ceramics in my sophomore year of college. I had a friend taking ceramics, and I would occasionally go to the studio and watch the magic of throwing a pot on a wheel. I was intrigued and always wondered if that was something I could do, but not enough to make this work my, my main function of art. 13 years ago, I was looking for something to do in my retirement years. And for Christmas, my wife gave me a class at Northern Clay Center, which is located here in Minneapolis. After my first class, I thought I would take another. And as my throwing improved, my interest grew. I have been able to make pots ever since. I still consider myself a student, though I'm by no means an expert in pottery. I'm currently taking classes at Anoka Ramsey Community College and also spend time watching videos online. To learn more about ceramics and functional work is my main focus at this time. I was first exposed to wood-fired pottery about 7 years ago through a class I took from a local art center. I met Pratibha at an art fair and we talked about wood firing. I had mentioned that if she ever needed somebody to help with a wood firing, I'd be glad to join them. This is one thing about wood firing, and it's been mentioned before. It's a community thing. One person couldn't wood fire by themselves. It's not like a gas kiln where you can finish this in, maybe 10 hours. It usually takes 2 to 3 days to fire the kiln. And it's a lot of work to do it. So anyway, about a year later, I got an email from Pratibha and asked if I was still interested in joining them. So my journey with wood firing began with that invitation. If you are interested in wood firing, be prepared to work hard. It's been mentioned by everybody up to this point that there's a lot of hard work in here. It's not just a matter of loading the kiln and throwing wood in. You've got to do all you can to prepare the wood for it, load the kiln, do maintenance on the kiln off and on, and clean up at the end of the firing. This kiln here is a piece I call Close Encounters. And this is a way I'm looking to go in the future. It's a piece that is somewhat sculptural in its presentation. And on this piece, there is no glaze at all on the outside of it. This is all done with what's called flashing slips and the natural clay itself. It's a play with the flames that go on there, and that brings out the color in this based on, you know, what happens to be in the clay and what's in the slips. I also have a platter in the show that I call space debris. The reason I call it that, this was really made a lot with just a bunch of debris that happened during the firing of the kiln. This is a platter that I had made. The red spots in there was bare clay, and you see some white dots in there, which was, I had some pieces that were fired on top of this, and that blocked that off. And of course, you can't have clay, you know, present where the pot is touching. So that was left bare. And that was with that color was done with the flashing slips that were on there. The rest of it is a mixture of glaze and the ash that goes landed on the platter. Well, during the firing, some of those pieces that were sitting on the platter or next to it had a problem and either tipped over or something in the kiln happened to, you know, break some of the pieces that were in there. So down in the bottom left-hand corner, as you look at it, there's kind of a triangular piece there. That was a piece of clay that fell into the glaze, and it was stuck there. There was no way I could get that out. There were also some of those dots had included wadding that was holding the pots that got stuck into the glaze. And it was either because the glaze ran or it was, you know, the placement of the piece in there or movement that it was stuck in there. So to get this, I was really disappointed in this piece when it was first finished, but with a lot of hard work on that piece, I think I spent several months, not continuously, but working on parts of it to get it looking like it's a cohesive piece instead of a bunch of debris that was sitting on top of a plate. And I really kind of liked the way it turned out, but for the longest time, I was just going to toss it. So I started in ceramics late in life, and I did it because I was looking for something to do when I was going to retire. That has been really something to keep me going after retirement. I had worked, you know, probably 50 years plus. I started working when I was about 12 or 13 at various jobs, and that's all I was used to, you know, that and playing sports, I guess. And it's really different when you retire. So, you know, I started that as a retirement, prepare for retirement, and over the years, it's become something I look forward to. The ceramic community is a great place to meet new friends. Most potters will share information readily back and forth. And part of my lifelong work has been learning, new things. And so this is just a continuation what I did in my professional life as I was working and earning a living, and it brings me lots of enjoyment. Thank you for listening, and I hope your journey in pottery, either as a potter or an admirer of ceramic works, will give you the rewards and benefits that I've been experiencing.
Yay. Thank you, Mike. That was
You're
great.
welcome.
It was really fun to hear about that platter too, because when you put it in the show, I was curious, and now I kind of have its backstory. We are going to move right along to Joanne Reske Kirkman. I will mute, and Joanne, you can take over, and I'm going to screen share.
I think I am. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Joanne.
Primarily, I'm a painter. Creating three-dimensional sculpture with clay is a new avenue of exploration for me. Surface texture, positive, negative spaces, line, balance, rhythm, pattern, and form are primary elements in my sculptures as they are in my paintings. Working with the chemistry of applied color and handmade glazes, combined with the magical transformation of surface in the high-fired Cone 10 reduction gas kiln, and especially in the Tandava Anagama wood-fired kiln, inspires me. The creative process for me is an educated one. An artist, for me, must learn how to speak with a medium of one's choosing. And I had to learn how to work with clay, and I'm thankful for Lee for teaching me. All of artwork must address 4 dimensions. An artist must have a concept or an idea. And with that concept comes the content of the work, meaning what is it about in sculpture? Next is the form. How do you go about making that concept and content applicable in real life, not just vaporous in the atmosphere? And finally, context. How does it fit into our real world? And my formal education in college and graduate school was in studio art painting with a minor in art history. I had one clay class as an undergrad, and that's where I learned my best lesson. A professor complimented my work as he slid it off my banding wheel, crushing it along with my ego. He explained, whatever you do with clay, it cannot be precious. Always, always remember this. And I always have. And actually, I didn't work with clay after that until many, many years later. Working with clay is hard. You don't get immediate results like you do as a painter. You have to be patient and you have to wait. When you put on glaze, it's not the color that you're imagining it to be. You have to wait for the firing. And sometimes even in the firing, when you look at the test glazes and your test samples, it doesn't turn out the way you expect it to be. And so you have to kind of go along with what the kiln does and what the clay does and what the glaze does. The concepts of my work are derived from my passionate interest in art history and ancient world history. I use pictorial imagery from various cultures throughout history by utilizing myths and religious and secular symbols in my work. I'm fascinated especially by prehistoric burial objects in particular, and our ancestors' quests for the afterlife, the spiritual life, God, and the spirit world. These ancient associations with the unknown spirit world are typified in symbolic representations of the natural world and animism. The content of my work is how I develop my thoughts into a solid form, the choices I make to communicate an idea. The difficult part of creating my sculpture is with the actual construction of the piece. Sometimes what I visualize and what I can actually achieve are two different things altogether. But that too is part of art making, adapting, changing, experimenting, re-engineering. Re-engineering a plan is sometimes necessary. Sometimes the intuitive process for me can accomplish a means to an end, but sometimes I'm in free fall. When this happens, emotive energy takes over and something completely different turns out. With my love of brush painting, working on the surface of my sculptures is the exciting accumulation of the process. I experiment with engobe, stains, terracage, wax, and slip to make my own glazes. In this piece, this is just raw clay that was fired in Tandava, and it's very simple. And I'm starting to work with other pieces combined with my ceramic pieces. And I really like the idea of combining different things with my clay bodies to see what happens in experiments, what the wood firing does with the clay bodies themselves. So thank you, Laura, for getting everything set up for our exhibition. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I'm thankful to Lee, and I'm thankful to Pratibha and all of the gang in the Glencoe group for welcoming me, teaching me, and sharing all that there is to learn, and sharing the joy in this surprisingly glorious method of transforming clay. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. That was fascinating. It's really fun to hear through the background of like your research and everything and connect it. That's been really fun to hear. So I think we are moving on to Jack, I believe. Let me pull up Jack's work. All right. And Jack, I'm going to mute myself and then just jump right. So Jack, I don't know if you can hear me. Whenever you're ready, you can just take over the reins. Oh, you're muted. Sorry. Can you unmute? There we go. Okay.
Thank you, Laura. My relationship with clay began in 1970 with an introductory ceramics course in the art department at the University of Minnesota. The clay section was under Warren McKenzie's leadership. I was immediately hooked. The experience led me to major in studio arts. I found high fire gas kiln stoneware reduction firings spellbinding. To see flames shooting out of large fire brick kilns late into the night was hypnotic. And to open the kiln was unbelievable. After graduation, I stacked a fire brick kiln in the backyard of a friend and partnered a studio with a friend in the warehouse district of St. Paul. New for the times, it was across from Mears Park. After a few years, my studio partner left town and I made a studio in the basement of my own house. I bought a Scott electric kiln and continued to produce. I made functional ware mostly, one-of-a-kind shapes and designs with distortion to add elements of interest to mundane functional plates, bowls, mugs, and pitchers. Hand building a bit too, I started to make stoneware lamps as well. Electric kilns fire and oxidation, and much of the color of my glazes from reduction firing at the U was lost. Many of my glazes became less interesting and drab. Fast forward to a few years back when I met Pratibha at a drawing and painting studio. She invited me to fire in Tandava, her Anagama wood kiln in Glencoe. It was a flashback for me to the gas kiln firings at the U, but on steroids. And with the additional benefit of wood ash in the air, the ash glazes each piece in the kiln, not to mention what comes with the camaraderie of the potter's group. This chapter in my 52-year journey in clay is the best. I have been buying commercially mixed clay from Continental Clay. I use a buff stoneware, which contains iron and fires red, and a wood fire porcelain, which fires white. Amico underglazes and a variety of glazes that I make from recipes that I learned during my studies at the university. Pots are first bisque fired in my Scott kiln. Then I apply underglazes or glazes if I desire, but you needn't glaze the pots. The atmosphere in the 3-day-long wood firing deposits smoke and ash on the pots and creates interesting glaze of its own. Falling ash in the kiln is directional, and that opens up an interesting approach to placing pots in the kiln. Pots are first wadded, and this is a process of stilting each pot off the shelves with small feet of refractory clay glued on the pots to keep them from being glazed to the shelves during the long and sooty firing. Pots can be wadded on their sides, upside down, or at angles to create interesting glazed patterns on the pots. When the firing is over and the pots are cooled, one simply taps these wads off. The shape of wads and the placement of wads on the pots can also leave interesting marks. Some sanding and grinding occasionally is needed to remove rough areas to finish. In the end, I try to create functional pottery that will bring as much joy to the user as I have experienced using these pots myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I had to show the lamps too, because they're awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad you did.
Yeah. So we are going to keep moving along. We saw Jack. Now we're going to look at Zack. Zack,
Switch, just one letter.
Whenever. Take it away.
Awesome. Hi, guys. I'm Zack McPherson. I've been doing pottery for about 8 years now. Started my senior year of high school and then a little bit in college. And then I started with this group in about, I think, 2019. Barb and I joined. I think it was around the same time. It's definitely been a journey. I almost failed my first ceramics course. I got a D. I was really not that good at it, but I kind of stuck with it because I really liked it. And then just got better and better as things kind of went on. I think the biggest, one of the biggest memories I have, actually very similar to Joanne, picking back off her, is that one of my professors, after I started getting good at it, he basically challenged me, and I think it was about 500 pieces he had me made. And then he said, you get to keep 50 of these. So it was definitely a learning experience there. But since then, I definitely had a transition from gas firing, so reduction gas firing in Cone 10, to this wood fire atmosphere now. And I actually used to hate wood firing, and now I love it for the exact same reason. And that's it creates very unique pieces, but you can't really control it. You can do your best to set up the right circumstances, but you just never exactly know what it's going to be until you actually unpack that kiln. So that's actually why I love it now, because every piece is unique. Even when you have two pieces that structurally are identical and you glaze them the exact way, As Jack was saying just before me, that placement in the kiln has this huge effect, and that atmosphere and the pots around it and the ash hitting it. And I love that now versus before. I hated that I couldn't know exactly what a piece was, and I couldn't tell what it was going to look like before I actually put it in. I can have idea, but I have to be okay with that it might look very different, or at least structurally different. Actually, on this one right here, you can see kind of that teal. That's what the pot was supposed to look like, was just that green teal in the center. Sorry, I'm like pointing at my screen, you guys can't see it. But that upper teal that we see, that matte finish, that's beautiful. And I did not expect that in any capacity. And that's because of the ash deposits on it, as well as the pots next to it on the right side, and a smaller pot right in front of it. And you can kind of see that, and that kind of created kind of an ash pocket there. But yeah, I mean, I love it now because everything is unique. I definitely used to make just mainly functional stuff. So as you can see here, like a little teacup, some vases. I'm starting to, we'll get to eventually, I think it's the last picture. I'm definitely moving towards not sculptural, because all my pieces are hand thrown, but wheel altered, and something that just has it's not quite functional. It's more just speaks for itself, and you'll see that in a minute here. But I love doing bigger stuff, platters, everything like that. But I'm definitely going from functional, and I'm starting to go more into this. So still vase-like, but in this capacity, you can't really hold anything. It could hold some dry flowers perhaps, but I want pieces to be able to speak for themselves, and they don't have to be dependent on use. So that's the shift that I'm definitely making. That's kind of all I got. Yeah, I look forward to any questions though.
Thanks, Zach. Yay. All right, moving right along. We are going to look at Lee Persell next. And I do have another video that I'll show maybe toward the end this time, if you're okay with that, Lee. It just kind of, it goes around one of the parts in the show.
That works. Oh, am I up? Well, my name is Lee Persell, and I have, the only thing I've ever wanted to do is to be a potter. I went to school with a clear vision at the University of Minnesota to be a potter. Left and just continued on with growing and becoming more adventuresome in what I wanted to do. My pots are all about transitional areas, where the lip meets the body meets the hip, the foot. I'm intrigued by these areas where a matte glaze might become slightly shiny because of the ash dump from the firing. It's those kinds of transitions, the movement from one thing to another, that's always intrigued me. And so it wasn't much of a push to start firing in wood, because it's all about movement. It's all about the movement of the people and the time and the materials, the flame, how the ash, how it moves through the kiln, lands and dances around the pot, how the fire, it's the pots are like painted with fire. They reflect everything that goes on in the kiln and things that have happened before. It's a kind of firing that's very interactive. It's not about control. It is about moving through the process and allowing the process, as well as all those other things, to really take an effect on the work. So wood firing is interesting and all on its own, of the idea of letting go and letting the movement of things happen. Wood firing is amazing, to say the least. So if you haven't tried it, it is a wonderful opportunity to to move through the process in a different way. So that is me. Video?
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
to video if that's okay with you.
Good. That would be great.
My embedded videos did not participate
Oh.
with me, but I
That's okay.
I can still just share them. So
Works. No.
thank you, Lee. Yeah, I love that
No
one.
problem.
The light, kind of like the matte, and then the shiny. That's
Mhm.
a big favorite of mine.
Yes.
And last but not least, we're gonna look at some pots from Dom Venzant. Hopefully he's still here. Hasn't left the building.
I'm here.
Yay. All right, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Okay, I'm not sure how this is gonna work because I'm in the classroom. Does
We can-
anyone
we can
on
hear
the other side hear an echo?
It's mumbling. It's not bad. I think you'll be okay.
Okay. So, my name is Dominique Honoré Venzant. My middle name is a derivation of my dad's first name. And I'm gonna beg your pardon for a moment, and I'm gonna turn the volume off on my main presenting screen. One moment. Okay, I'm back. So, my middle name is Honoré, which is kind of a strange name. It's spelled Anare, and it's a Fijian interpretation of the name Henry. So it's like Henri, as it'd be pronounced in French. But the Fijians, as in people from the Fijian Islands, have their own way about pronouncing certain words that they come in contact with. So I'm one of, there are 4 children in my family. I'm one of them. There are 2 girls and 2 boys, and we're all 2 years apart. And I'm the only object maker in my family. My grandfather was a dairy farmer, and I wanted to be on the farm when I was a kid. And I remember sitting on the tractor's fender with my grandpa and saying to him, you know, I think I'm 10 years too young to be a farmer with you. If I was 10 years older, instead of 8, if I was 18, I would have had a chance to be on the farm with my grandfather. So I always looked for an opportunity to work with materials that are related directly to the earth, and ceramics does exactly that. So in my upbringing, there was very little art. We had some pieces from Fiji in my home growing up, but very little other art. And I think that's an experience that many people in America kind of navigate now. We put posters on the walls, and we buy things at Kmart or at Walgreens or whatever that may or may not match the couch and match our throw rugs and our carpets. But what I'm intrigued by in the ceramic process is the ability to create things from relatively little means. So I like to think of it sometimes as clay and ground grit and dust. So my work becomes sharing that, which is dirt, with other people. So I'm often sitting at the potter's wheel, as I am right now, with a bowl in front of me and some other things. And these 4 cups are pieces, all of the pieces that you've seen are directly from Tandava. And rather than taking time to talk about my process, I want to say how thankful I am for the opportunity to be a part of this group. I think for me, it's been close to, if not absolutely life-saving, to be a part of a group of people who are so connected to the process of sharing. I think is one of the easier ways to say it. So I like to make bottles sometimes, and I like to fill them up with strong alcoholic drinks and share them with my friends. And I look forward to doing that in the near future with all of the people who are part of Tandava and new friends that I haven't met as well. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and thank you to everyone. And I think we have students here for question and answer, but I'm going to stop talking so Laura can take control once again. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Riverland. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Everybody, this was so fun. Dom brought his students to the show, and so I have a bunch of questions, and I think he may have some too. I will try to direct them, and they're all about pieces that are in the show. So I'll try to direct them to the individual artists, and then I will do my best to, if I have a picture of the piece, pull it up just so people can see it. So I'm going to start with Zack. One of the questions you got, and this one, I don't think I have a picture of it, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. How did you get the texture on the Shino globe?
Oh, yeah. You know, you don't have a picture of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a process using something called sodium silicate. I mix it with that one. I believe it was a non-colored slip. So basically I work with bee clay, which is a white stoneware, and I mixed in some sodium silicate. And then basically that piece, sorry, so you can actually throw my hands. You actually just make a cylinder, and then you apply that slip with the sodium silicate on it, and then you can let it dry. You can torch it. The different processes of drying and how quickly you're drying it will have an effect on how small or how large those cracks are. But as soon as you apply it, then you actually start throwing just from the inside. So basically, that globe, which is, probably about the size now, started as a much taller cylinder actually, and then I just went from the inside and started shaping it. So it was only touched on the inside once it was a cylinder, and that created those cracks to form and allowed that color differentiation with the Shino.
Oh, thank you, Zack.
Thank you.
All right, our next question's for Joanne, and it is based on this piece. Do the cuts or slashes mean or represent anything in this piece? Might be muted, I believe. Let me see. I think, yep, there you go.
Okay, the slash marks represent the slashings that were found in prehistoric caves that nobody actually knows what they are. If they're first mathematical, numeric additions or records of some sort. So, or maps. So it's a reference to that.
Cool. Thanks, Joanne. Our next question is for Pratibha, and it is based on, and I think I have a little video of this piece, so I'm going to try to play that. It's based on your talking pictures piece. And the question, see if I can pull it up. The question is, what was your inspiration behind the talking pictures? They kind of remind me of the pots or kitchen utensils that talked from Beauty and the Beast. That was what they were thinking of. But did you have a particular inspiration? And this is just video of them from the show.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, the inspiration is I always like to bring life to my work, and it is a little bit of a humor and the joy it expresses. I was playing with the clay. I made the base, the cylinder, and when did the cover for it, it's just the form evolved itself. Uh, then like it whimsical. It's very whimsical.